AP history assignment compares Trump to Nazis and communists. Yes! Finally, the progressives admit publicly that there is no difference between Nazis and commies. They're both stinking socialists. Boy, for Trump, it's just more winning. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated, the only education program you need to watch that keeps you informed on what's going on in K-12 classrooms and college campuses all around the world. Today, we're discussing how tech giant Google is being sued for Chromebook data collection in public schools, plus a California university offers free tuition to families earning less than $80,000 a year. Too bad Lori Loughlin is a little late on that. And a school in Michigan suspends 4 kids for using offensive language in their own homes. But we start in Baltimore, where an AP high school history class is under fire after showing a picture that compared President Donald Trump to the Nazis and the commies. So yeah, and I was not kidding about the opening of my opening of the program here, the little teaser. This is really interesting. What they're doing is they're trying to tar and feather Donald Trump. Surprise! Nobody, right? But what gets me is that they're willing to go so far to try to smear Donald Trump that they fail to make their traditional progressive distinction between Nazis, who are right-wing Christian bigots, and communists, who are really interesting dictators like Bernie Sanders tells us Fidel Castro was. And so that right there is worth it. I expect when I send my kids to public school and they take AP history to get a whole bunch of shite history. I expect that. But for an AP teacher to slip up and basically argue that the communists and the Nazis are relatively the same thing and Trump fits both categories, well, this is serious progress in civics.
Okay, so the graphic in question here happened at a Baltimore area high school, and the lesson slide that they put up has a picture of Trump with the caption, "Wants to round up a group of people and build a giant wall." And then underneath, as you see, there are 2 images. One's a swastika, and it says, "Been there." And then to the right of it, it says a hammer and sickle, and it says, "Done that." And you can see on the left side of the slide says, "Oh, that is why it sounds so familiar."
I love this. I mean, again, it's stupid, right? I mean, the idea that Donald Trump, who is simply trying to protect American borders, which, ladies and gentlemen, when you become the president of the United States and you swear on the Constitution to defend this, as the CEO of the federal government, one of your few jobs constitutionally as president of the United States is to defend the borders. So if you're calling Donald Trump a Nazi for defending the borders, then by definition, the Constitution is a Nazi document. And I shouldn't say that too loudly before they get that idea.
Well, and you're talking about this document called the Constitution, and you had referenced tarring and feathering and all these things that, I mean, AP history courses don't even discuss anymore because we're too busy with the current events of Donald Trump being a Nazi.
Well, just go back to that picture again, Mike. And what you see there is you see a scowling Donald Trump. I love the fact that he's wearing a Soviet red tie. I love the fact that that is highlighted in red,
and
right?
Isn't that him as part of The Apprentice?
Yes, it is. I believe so. Yeah.
Capitalism.
You're fired. To the textbook writers, you're fired.
And it seems that parents and even a college professor agree with your sentiment.
This is the image in question, taken in a history class at Loch Raven High School Wednesday. It's circulating among students and parents at the school.
To even imply that our president is in any way a Nazi or a communist is outrageous.
I was told that by another student who said the topic in that class was supposedly world leaders shunning other groups out.
High schools are not supposed to take advocacy positions against presidents. We're supposed to explain how political advocacy works, if that's what they're doing, but they're certainly not to take a position that the president is comparable to these awful leaders of the past.
And that's exactly right. Good for you, Professor. That's a surprise. But I'll go one step further and say this. You have an actual communist running for the Democrat. Now, in fact, he's leading the pack. And when I say actual communists, I'm not engaging in their kind of hyperbole, right? No. This guy went to the Soviet Union for his honeymoon. This guy actually defends communist dictators. This guy actually talks about how some of the most murderous regimes in human histories made the trains run on time. And we can learn from them. This is the guy who's defending China, right, in the way they've been handling their concentration camps and the lies they're telling the global health community about the coronavirus. This guy is a communist. This is the irony to me, that if you're going to do that about anybody, you're going to accuse anybody in the political spectrum of being actually communist-allied or sympathetic, it would be Bernie. Where's Bernie's picture on that?
Bernard Sanders.
If you had Bernie's picture, and you had those two things,
it'd be perfect.
that would be shocking, because not only would you have the logical communist ties, it would also point out to people that communist dictators aren't any better than Nazi dictators, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, there would be so much win. But still, to the real Donald J. Trump, dude, without you, this never would have happened. Without you, we'd still be teaching kids that Nazism is a Christian heresy, that all the Nazi leadership were church-going members of the Catholic Church. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Donald, for doing what common sense and college degrees have not been able to do, and to remind the American people that socialism, whether it's fascist socialism, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Soviet communists, they're all doing the same shite.
You need a Grammy or
I need an Emmy?
Oscar and an Emmy.
You like me. You really like me.
Okay, well, Google, big tech giant Google, is getting sued. And they're getting sued by the New Mexico Attorney General Hector Balderas, who is alleging that the company is violating the privacy of students who are using the free Chromebooks that are provided to schools through the company's G Suite for Education platform. And the suit alleges the collection of sensitive information, such as the students' physical locations, web and search history, their YouTube viewing habits, contact list passwords, and voice recordings.
Talk about hitting the G Suite.
I knew you were
that was
gonna.
coming. I didn't name it that. I'm just pointing out the obvious patheticness of that. And gee, surprise, surprise, surprise. We've been saying it for 7 years, 8 years.
Yes,
all this free. I remember 8 years ago, when some of my earliest Common Core talks were saying, "Hey, Mom, Dad, all this free technology that Bill Gates, who's sponsored Common Core in the numbers of billions of dollars, giving your schools free Chromebooks, free iPads. This has nothing to do with their love of technology. It has everything to do with being able to monitor and track and data gather on your kid. And good for New Mexico, good for New Mexico for being one of the first states to say, hey, stick it."
Balderas specifically said, he didn't say stick it, but he said student safety should be the number one priority of any company providing services to our children, particularly in schools. Tracking student data without parental consent is not only illegal, it is dangerous. And my office will hold any company accountable who compromises the safety of New Mexican children.
It is dangerous. Hallelujah. Who is this guy?
He's the Attorney General, Hector Balderas.
Can you imagine a guy like that as the superintendent of New York schools?
Yeah.
Have him move from New York, take over from
Stop.
Carranza, that idiot. Can you imagine the slapdown that you could do on some of these public schools, what's going on if you had guys like that willing to take those jobs on? But he's too smart to be a superintendent.
And Balderas also has filed suit against Google and other companies back in 2018 for violating child privacy laws. And specifically, it was the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act provisions. That suit is basically separate from this new one with the Chromebooks, and it's still ongoing.
Well, we've done stories over the last year or so about how they're actually showing what we would consider pornography to your children on those Chromebooks, right? They're taking them to websites on EBSCO. Remember, we did a story about that, where they're showing them, literally giving them access to pornographic material, and while they're data gathering them. I guess the federal government needs to know what porn sites 11-year-olds are surfing. This is the whole point of giving them the technology to begin with. The technology, by the way, that allows them to access porn without their parents knowing it.
This is true. Well, by the time they get to college then, because they already are giving the free Chromebooks, they might as well get free tuition. And that's what USC is planning to do. If your family makes under $80,000 a year, you better try and apply to USC, because you'll get in and not have to pay a penny.
You watch. The first year this goes into effect, 60% of the applicants are going to be Asian, and then they're going to have to scale it down, right? Asians and whites will make up 75 to 80% of the applicants the first year, and then there's going to be a crisis of conscience at USC. You watch, mark my words, we're going to be doing that story in 8 months. However, I'm a capitalist. Hey, you want to spend your money that way? I would simply point out to USC that if you're going to spend our government money giving people free tuition, then maybe we'll rethink how much money we're going to give you. All right? If that's what you're going to do with it, you got so much money to burn at USC that you can give a significant number of people free tuition, go for it. But that also suggests pretty strongly that you don't need us subsidizing you.
Well, speaking of USC and how much money they have in their endowment, they have $5.7 billion dollars, and they're pointing out, they're making it seem like, well, we only have 5.7 billion because Harvard has 40.9 billion and Stanford is at 27.7 billion.
Yep.
But just so mom and dad know, if you're gonna go to USC, you're gonna be saving $57,000 per year in just the tuition rates. $57,000 for 1 year of tuition at
How
USC.
much do you want to bet
insanity.
that the room and board, the student fees, the meal plans for those kids who get in free are going to go higher?
Oh, they will. Well, when you put the cost of housing and books into it, it would cost you $77,000.
Right. So still about $20,000.
Another $20,000.
Another $20,000 just to be on campus, right? Yeah.
We'll see what happens with
Mark
it.
my words. The headline: USC concerned. Asians and whites dominate free school program. You watch, it's coming down the road.
That's a long headline. Well, I wonder, maybe they'll put a colon in there, put a little subhead. They're estimating that it'll be about 1,000 students, about a third of each new class is going to benefit from this increase. So they can do the math and see what happens.
$5.7 billion. Those cuts should come from your endowment,
yeah,
right?
It's true.
This has been one of my biggest pet peeves for a long time. You've got these private and public universities. University of Wisconsin is a state school, right? 1.1 billion dollar
something like that.
War chest endowment they've got. Okay, you've got money and you don't have to spend it, and it's not getting taxed, and those endowments continue to grow. Why are we giving you so much money so you can stash so much of it away? I get it for the rainy day fund, but still, good for USC. Assuming they're taking their money from their endowment, I still make the point, right, that what this suggests to me is that the federal government is subsidizing our institutions of higher learning way beyond they need to. And by the way, if we actually were more careful about how we funded public universities, only fund the ones that need it and that demonstrate that they've used it properly, we'd probably have fewer colleges in this country, and they'd be fuller than the many colleges we have that aren't.
All right, well, we talked earlier about Google and getting data on kids. Well, now a school is deciding that, the data or whatever it is you do at your home in the privacy of your home means that the school can expel you. A school in Michigan has decided to discipline students for what they do and say at home, not in the school and not about the school, but what they do on their private time, on their private phones. And so there's been a case filed in the U.S. District Court in Michigan on behalf of 4 students who summarily were suspended from the Saline High School because of a private Snapchat conversation. If you know what Snapchat is, do you know what Snapchat is?
I do. It's kind of like the old wireless. Is it Morse code?
More
Yeah, right. Dots and dashes. Is that what that is?
They're dots and dashes. Basically, kids these days, they're using the Snapchat. They take a picture of themselves and they put some text or something and they send it to.
Is this where all the naked selfies are coming through?
Oh, yes, they are.
Right.
And Snapchat, you can delete it. It deletes after so much time, or you can save it, and then that's how kids are getting in trouble. And so the school found out about this offensive language that these 4 kids used, and they took action immediately by kicking the kids out of school.
So you had a situation like this, right? African American and Caucasian children were using inappropriate and offensive language in a joking manner and in the context of immature banter. So they're little kids, immature. They included black kids. They were joking around, right? Mm-hmm. So all of this is hijinks. Now, I'm interested. All 4 were suspended, and 2 of the kids are being recommended for expulsion. I'm curious, which kids are getting expelled? Something tells me it's not the black kids. Is that fair? Is that a fair statement?
I'm not going to say because I don't know.
We don't know. But you had 4 kids,
the
right?
Privacy of the kids, yes.
And 2 were white and 2 were black? Is that the number? We know that black and Caucasian kids were involved.
It's all the privacy, so they don't say. Mm-hmm. So we can only
speculate.
Speculate.
I cannot imagine a situation in which they're going to expel 2 black kids for being racist. In fact, if that were to happen, that would be news.
Yeah.
It also would give the lie to the idea that African Americans can't be racist because, they're black. So that would be a path-breaking situation were it to happen, which is how it's not happening. And I'm betting if 2 of the kids are being recommended for expulsion and 2 just for suspension, I would pay a lot of money to a bookie to bet that the 2 kids getting recommended for expulsion were the white kids.
You're putting a lot of bets down.
Hey, these are as good a bet the best bet. There's nothing
The
going.
best of the best.
The best of the best, man.
All right, well, the specific conversation, just so parents, again, are aware, did not happen at school. It didn't happen at a school event. It didn't happen on anything school equipment. And it was kids on their private phones. And the kids are embarrassed by what they did because, they found out about it. And so with this case, they're specifically saying the case boils down to a simple question. When a child misbehaves at home, who disciplines, the local public school or the parent? If a child gets stopped for drunk driving on a Saturday night, does the school have the right to expel that student? The answer is obvious. No. The conversation of these children had nothing to do with the school. It has no authority to discipline students for out-of-school misbehavior.
Right, and the kids are embarrassed because they were screwing around. I mean, again, I still ask myself this question. If you're a white kid listening to a black rap song that uses the N-word, can you go after them for that? Or when African Americans use the word towards each other by dropping the ER and adding an A at the end, right? This whole thing is so overblown. This is the nanny state. This is the panopticon, right? The public schools are watching your kids 24/7 because they're really their kids, not your kids. And whatever happens, whatever your kids are doing on social media, even if somebody comes and tells us a rumor, hey, I live next door to a fellow third grader, and he used this word the other day. I guarantee you the all-encompassing public schools think they have the right to police that behavior.
And this is why I say, Mom and Dad, if you have given your kid a cell phone because all the other kids have cell phones and you don't want your kid to be left out, this is what's going to happen. It happens over and over. And this is why I am so thankful that, and I've heard all my friends say it, when I was in high school, I'm so glad we didn't have cell phones because the bleep we would have gotten in, because there's no evidence of it, but everything these kids do is out there for the public to see.
Now you know why they call it Snapchat.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week. If you like the show, please help us keep others educated by sharing this episode with your family and friends on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Parler, or the email things on the internets.
And if you're a fan of the show, how can you not be? If you are a patriotic American and would like some help promoting what you do, advertise with us. Visit freedomproject.com/advertise. That's freedomproject.com/advertise, and we'll make you a star. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. And until next time, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Stay educated, my friends.